Hi friends, this is Bilal Haider, and today we are going to learn about how can we find multiple items from an array. So in the previous part we learned that find method helps us in finding one element from an array if it matches what we are searching for, right? But there are numerous cases when we want to find multiple items, just like we saw in the previous video. Let's say we have a data set, and it has the user has an interest, right, in programming. So what we want to do is we want to find all the users that have the programming interest, so we can connect them together so they can help each other, or for whatever reason. So we want to find multiple items, and how can we do that? So before I start talking about the method, I have actually added a few more users in here. So we have now 5 users data, right? And some of them have an interest in programming, others have an interest in music, right? So what we want to do is basically we want to find all the users that have an interest in programming or music, right? So how can we do that? For that, to do that, we need to learn to use another method which is called map. Okay, so what we do is we say let's call it result maybe, and we want to do map, and map is going to help us in getting all the users that have common interest, or find multiple values from an array based upon our search criteria. So we are not limited to perform our search only on interest. We can maybe find all the users that have an age greater than 20, or we have a large social network and there are millions of users on it, and we want to find all the users that are young. So maybe we are aiming at the age group between 20 years old and 30 years old, right? So that that kind of search we can do with the map. Okay, so in our case we'll do a search based upon interest, but you can basically use this map method to search for something based on any criteria that you want. Okay, so just like the find method, map also wants you to pass a function to it. Okay, it's not going to accept a constant value, it's not going to accept a string, it's not going to accept an object, a JSON object. It needs a function. Okay, so we'll give it a function. So just like the find method, it's going to iterate through all the elements of an array, and it's going to put them in this item variable. It can be item, it can be anything, it can be this variable, you can name it anything you want. So now if I do if item dot interest equals programming, right, then I want to return that item. Okay, so the difference between find and map is if the find method finds an item, it terminates right at the spot, but the map method continues doing its search, and it finds all the elements that matches your search criteria. So I personally think it should be called find many, but they called it map, so it's okay. So JavaScript called it map, so yeah. So but what map does, basically it iterates through all the elements, and it's going to return them all if it matches the criteria which you're specifying inside the method which you're passing to it. Okay, so now if I go down here and if I console log result, right, so if I now run the code, right, you'll see that it finds our two elements, right, and with the interest programming, and it puts undefined in rest of the time. Okay, so that's how the map works. Basically it's going to return the good thing about map is it's always going to return something. So it's going to start its iteration, right, and it's going to see whether it matches the criteria, right, and inside your logic um, you are returning the item. So if the interest is programming, it's going to return the item. If it's not, if your criteria, if your search condition doesn't match, it's going to return undefined. So map always returns something, right? So that's how it works. So what we can do here, we can say else. So if you find an item, you return the item, else you return maybe null, right? So now if I run the code again, it's going to put null instead of putting undefined in those values, right? So this is another method which we can use in our JavaScript programs where we want to find multiple items from an array. We can use this basically. So let's actually go ahead and create our own method here. Let's remove this thing because undefined will do. So let's now create our own method, and you notice one more thing, that it is not returning a single user, but it's returning an array. So this result is also an array that contains all the users that matched that matched our criteria basically. So yeah, so let's actually create our own method here because we learned to create our own method. So let's call our method const find users by interest, right? So and we know that it's going to take an interest, so let's call it interest. And now what we can do, we can just cut our logic which we made and we return the result just like that. And now we have created our custom method here, and our custom method is going to help us find all the users that have common interest. So now I can do let result equals find users by interest, and if I pass programming, right, it's going to result me the same exact thing that it returned the previous time. And if I change this to music, right, so it's going to return me all the users that have interest in music. Okay, so that's how map works. But you see here we have a new problem. We have some empty values in our array, so we should be able to do something about them. Like we don't want empty values in our array, in our result. So for that, to remove the empty values from an array, we need to learn another JavaScript method that exists on array, and we'll learn about it in the next video. So this is all about map, and if you sit down there and you create a data, like you need to practice this code, right? And if you want to master the map, so you create a bunch of users or maybe bunch of fruits, um, maybe you create a bunch of planets, right? So if you're someone who has an interest in astronomy and maybe you have collected a data of maybe 1000 planets, right, that exist maybe in outer space, so you put all your data in an array, then you can perform a simple method, this method, and maybe later on if you want to find a planet that matches your criteria, you can just call your method like this and you will find your planet. So this was just an example to tell you that how powerful JavaScript is and what can you do with it. So this is all for now. I'll come back in the next video with another method.